Hey, greetings from the Pacific Northwest. Bo here. We've got no vinyl to show you, so I thought I'd show you, and I'll go through this as quickly as I can. This is the complete 1975-76 Topps basketball set. Once again, low end. I played with these as a kid, so these are all the league leader cards. I'll just try to go through these kind of as quickly as I can. If I've got something to say about somebody, I'll throw it in there. League leader cards. Rick Barry was a damn good free throw shooter. Tom Van Arsdale, his twin brother, also played in the NBA. Paul Silas, chairman of the boards, was later on the Supersonics championship team. Jerry Sloan, he later coached the Utah Jazz. Bob McAdoo, Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats. Buffalo Braves are now the LA Clippers for you kids that do not know. Dwight Davis, John Mingott was later a Bull. George Johnson, Ed Ratliff. Nate Tiny Archibald later won a championship. The Kansas City Kings, not the Sacramento Kings. They may have been the Kansas City Omaha Kings here. For you kids that don't know, Elmore Smith was later a Cleveland Cavalier. Bobby Dandridge, Bobby D, great defender, was with those Bullets that went to the back-to-back finals. Beat the Sonics one year, lost the next year. Louis Nelson. You'll walk. The Kangaroo Kid, Billy Cunningham. He later coached the 76ers with Dr. J to an NBA title. Gary Melchione. Barry Clemens. Jimmy Jones, he played in the ABA. I've got his poster from when he was with the Utah Stars. Tom Burleson. So the very first Sonic game I ever went to was in the 74-75 season, and he was the Sonic center. They beat the New Orleans Jazz with Pete Maravich. Fred Brown was my favorite player, but the big star was probably Spencer Haywood. Lou Hudson, he's a Hall of Famer. Harry Finkel. Jimmy McMillan's a real solid player, played with the Knicks later. Matty Gukas later coached the 76ers. Fred Foster. Bob Lanier's a Hall of Famer. Played with the Bucks later. Butch Beard. Cliff Mealy. Jimmy Walker, that's Jalen Rose's dad. Cassie Russell, later a Cavalier. John McLaughlin, pretty good scorer. Bernie, this is the New Orleans, they were not the Utah Jazz, the New Orleans Jazz. Bernie Fryer was later an NBA official. And Bill Bradley was later a U.S. Senator. Fred Carter was a damn good scorer. Dennis Autry, the Sonics picked him up when they went to the finals back-to-back years, and that was because Kareem did not play well against him because Dennis had thumped him once, and Kareem remembered that. Roland Garrett, there's my favorite player of all time, was later, and is still today, Downtown Freddie Brown, my all-time favorite NBA basketball player. Sidney Wicks, guy at UCLA that put up some good numbers, but his career went downhill. Herm Gilliam. Don Nelson was later a coach. This is kind of a tragic story. I mean, Ernie D. Gregorio, great point guard out of Providence, put up good numbers. Injuries cut short what should have been a really great career. Too bad. Jim Brewer. Chris Ford. Nick Witherspoon. Ollie Johnson. Keith Wilkes, some of you will remember he was later Jamal Wilkes with the Lakers. Zayd Abdul Aziz, a.k.a. George Raveling, before he became a Muslim. Lucius Allen was a Supersonic at one time on those great UCLA teams. Mickey Davis, Otto Moore. Walt Clyde Frazier, one of the best guards, one of the best dressers in NBA history. Steve Mix was a pretty decent forward. Nate Hawthorne. The Big E, Elvin Hayes, one of the all-time greats. Oh, Slick Watts. I'll tell the story later when I come across Rod Dearline's card in the set, but Donald Slick Watts was not super popular in our house. Lloyd Neal. Mark the hell out of Checklist. Mike Sojourner, he had played in the ABA. Randy Smith, quick guard, fast. There's John Block. I like Charlie Scott. Charlie Scott was a solid player, put up good numbers, had played in the ABA. He had been with the Phoenix Suns. They traded him to the Celtics for Paul Westphal, and then the Celtics and Suns played in the finals with the Celtics winning. Jimmy Jones, Derek Dickey, Curtis Rowe. Rick Adelman later coached the Trailblazers. Rudy Tomjanovich took a very devastating punch in the face. Very unfortunate accident. There's Pat Riley, one of the NBA's all-time great coaches. Cornell Warner. Earl the Pearl Monroe, a.k.a. Black Jesus. Black Jesus is the cooler nickname, I think. Alan Bristow, he played in the ABA too. Pistol Pete Maravich, I saw him play in person. Leonard Gray, the big redhead, rest in peace, Bill Walton, pretty good announcer too. Curtis Perry, Kevin Porter, Hondo, John Havlicek, solid Hall of Famer. 8-0 in his. He appeared in 8 NBA Finals. The Celtics won all 8 that he appeared in. Dwight Jones, Jack Marin, Dick Snyder, called him Duck. He was later with the Supersonics too. George Trapp, his partner and brother Billy too. Ron Riley, Charlie Johnson, Nate Thurman, Hall of Famer, great center. Kind of gets overshadowed because of the era he played in because of Kareem and Wilt and Bill Russell, but Nate Thurman, damn fine center. Stu Lance, Scott Wedman, I always liked his game. And in my opinion, this is the greatest NBA player of all time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And it's debatable. We all have our people we think, and I'm a Supersonic guy, so I'm not a Laker fan. When he was with the Bucks, I didn't mind him as much, but as a Laker, he irritated the heck out of me. But numbers are numbers, and stuff is stuff. And for my 2 cents, that's the greatest NBA player of all time. Aaron Jones, Jim Barnett, Clyde Lee, Archie Clark. Mike Reardon was a pretty fair little guard forward. Larry Steele, same way. Hustlers. Mike Bannum, Bob Kaufman, Kevin Stakem, a la Rick Barry, one of the great scorers. Mr. Underhand Free Throw himself, won a NBA title with the Golden State. Also won an ABA title, although he was hurt. He was with the Oakland Oaks when they won the ABA title. Kenny Charles, Tom Borowinkle, Austin Carr out of Notre Dame, great scorer. Leroy Ellis. Mike Newland was a pretty good player. Ron Behagen, Jim Price, Bud Stallworth had been a Supersonic. Earl Williams, Gail Goodrich. That was my mom's all-time favorite player right there, Gail Goodrich. Phil Jackson. We all know what Phil Jackson went on to do later. What a great coach. Phil Limpkin, Keith Erickson. There he is, Spencer Haywood, Spencer Fahia. Jumped out of the ABA, big star with the Sonics before he moved on. Had some trouble later in life, but can't take anything away from him. Wes Unseld, out of Louisville, terrific defender, great rebounder. Okay, these are just the team leader cards. The Buffalo Braves, we all know where they are now. They're the LA Clippers. Detroit Pistons. Most of these teams are still where they were. They're not. They're in Sacramento now. Milwaukee Bucks. They're in Utah now. And they're in Oklahoma City now. They're the current NBA champions. The thing about it is a lot of people up here some people were kind of mad about Oklahoma City winning a title. I'm not. I have nothing against their fan base. It's a great fan base. They're very passionate about the Thunder. It's just they should have had an expansion team, not Seattle's team. That's how I feel about it. But the people I'm mad at is that jackass from Starbucks that sold the Supersonics. They're the Wizards, of course, now. John Drew, great player till drugs got in the way. JoJo White was an outstanding guard out of Kansas. I believe he's in the Hall of Fame. Garfield Hurd, when he was later with the Phoenix Suns, during this, he's not a Buffalo Brave, he was with the Phoenix Suns. He hit a game-tying shot at the end of the first overtime, that great double or triple overtime game between the Suns and the Celtics that Classic Sports used to show a lot. He hit that one. Well, and then in Game 6 of the 79 Western Finals, he had a chance against the Supersonics to do the same thing, and they would have won the series. Seattle hadn't won in Phoenix in forever, and we had to win that game to force a Game 7, which Seattle thankfully won. And Gar Hurd shot an air ball, exact same type of shot that he made against Boston in the finals. Jim Clemens, Howard Porter, John Gianelli, the Butterbean Bob Love, Hall of Famer. Phil Smith was a pretty good guard. Larry McNeil. Brian Winters was a damn good guard. George Thompson, he had played in the ABA. Kevin Kunert. Henry Bibby. Mike Bibby is his son, and then his brother Jim pitched for the Pittsburgh Pirates. J.J. John Johnson later was the Supersonic. Great point forward. Doug Collins was a pretty good coach later. Good scorer, good overall player. John Brisker. So this guy, John Brisker, disappeared one day. Nobody knew what happened to him. And then later, they believe his body was found in a mass grave. He had gone to Uganda and had helped Idi Amin. So there's the twin. There's Dick Van Arsdale, Tom Leonard Truck Robinson, later with the Jazz, later with the Suns. Tremendous rebounder, great player. Dean Meminger is a great college player. Didn't really pan out in the pros. Phil Hankinson. Dale Schluter. Norm Van Leer was a pretty solid guard. Campy Russell. Happy Harrison. Sam Lacey. Jeff Mullins. Dave Bang. I think he's the mayor of Detroit now. Kevin Rastani. Dave Wool. E.C. Coleman. Jim Fox. Jeff Petrie, great shooter out of Princeton. Bad knees, or otherwise he had a heck of a career. Willie Norwood. Fred Boyd. Hawthorne Wingo. Ringo. Bob Wilson. Dave Cowens is a Hall of Famer. Tom Hollywood Henderson. He's not really, that's a football player, Hollywood Henderson. Sorry. Jim Washington. Clem Haskins. Jim Davis. Zelmo Beatty had played with the Utah Stars in the ABA. Mike D'Antoni, he's later a pretty good coach. Bobby Bingo Smith. Gary Brokaw. Mel Davis. Calvin Murphy, Hall of Famer out of Tiny Niagara. Another check the hell out of checklist. Nate Williams. LaRue Martin. Big George McGinnis should have been a Hall of Famer. Maybe he isn't a Hall of Fame. Had some great years with the Pacers in the ABA too. Clifford Ray. There's Paul Westfall. Went on to become a pretty good coach. Just a terrific guard. Outstanding player. Was later a Supersonic too. Calvin Skinner. Semifinals. NBA Finals. The Warriors took out the Bullets. That was another big shocker. Phil Chenier. Outstanding guard. John Brown. Lee Winfield. Connie Hawkins had got caught up in the college scandals back in the 60s, was banned from pro basketball. The ABA gave him a chance, and he ended up winning a lawsuit, got his career back, got to play in the NBA, but he got cheated out of a lot of good years. Connie Hawkins. Charles Dudley. Steve Patterson. Leon Benbow. Don, I don't even say his name, I don't even remember him. Don Kogis. Ron Williams. No counts. Okay, so this guy, Rod Dearline. Fred Brown had got hurt in the playoffs against Golden State. So Dearline he's from Elma, Washington, which is it's a tiny, tiny town. It's just up the road from here. It's about 30 minutes away. They were in my league in high school. The high school I went to, we played against Elma. But not in these days. I mean, I was a little kid here. But so Fred Brown got hurt. Dearline had to come off the bench against Golden State, and he was filling it up. He was having a hot night, and all I can think of is Sidney Wicks, and it's not Sidney Wicks. The Slick Watts. Slick Watts took over the game. He would not give Dearline the basketball, and Slick was not a good shooter. And Dearline could have won the game for us, but Slick shot us right out of it, and Golden State won. They ended up going to the finals and beating the Bullets. Not that Seattle had gone to the final. Well, it was the West semifinals, I think, when we lost to Golden State. Tom, I don't even remember him either. Kozelko, here's some team cards. He had the leader cards, now here's the team cards. Now, I've already said the teams that had moved and where they had moved to, or if they changed their name, but we'll show the team cards quickly. Next is the ABA. So this is the last year of the American Basketball Association. Then you had the merger, 4 teams joined, and the ABA was history. No more red, white, and blue ball. And I think 4 or 5 years later, the NBA incorporated the 3-point shot. There's Bill Russell. He was coaching the Supersonics then. Here we go. ABA league leaders, red, white, and blue ball. There's a young Moses Malone. His rookie card is in this set. Marvin, Bad News Barnes. But we'll talk about these players as we go through them. We won't talk about them in the league leader cards. Matt Calvin He was with the Virginia Squires. Had been a super quick guard with the Carolina Cougars. Billy Knight had some big years in the NBA too. Sven Nader was a backup, for Bill Walton, I think, at UCLA. But he was the second best center. Even though he was a backup, he was the second best center in college basketball. George Carter, famously, they didn't want to trade. There was a big trade between the Squires and the Spurs, and the Squires did not want to, or the Spurs did not want to. Anyhow, there's a big trade, and whoever it was, they didn't want to give up George Carter in the trade. It was a trade for George Iceman Gervin. Bird Averett. I actually have his, there's a kit you could get from the Kentucky Colonels, and I have it where you could join the Birdwatcher Society, and I actually own that too. Steve Snapper Jones, great announcer, rest in peace. It's a second-year card of George Ice Gervin. Look how young he was there. Holy cow. Lee Davis. They called this guy the legend, Ron Boone. He played forever. He never missed a game. Mike Jackson, Kevin Joyce. Ron Boone put up good numbers in the NBA too. Ralph Simpson. Tom Owens, very serviceable, put up some good numbers in the NBA. Marv Roberts. Gus Gerard, if it hadn't been for drugs, he'd have probably had a better career. BT Express, Brian Taylor. Rich Jones, going to be a rock and roll star. John Roche. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I do know he was an excellent three-point shooter. Travis Machine Gun Grant. Dave Twardzik was later on that Trailblazers championship team. Stu Johnson. Billy Keller. The only reason the Pacers even signed Billy Keller was to try to get superstar Rick Mount a year later. They were teammates at Purdue, thinking that they were friends. The thing with Rick Mount, Rick was a introvert, and his only real friend was his wife. Mike Green, he was later a Supersonic. The A-Train, Artis Gilmore, he's in the Hall of Fame. Call this man Super John Williamson. Okay, so this guy, Moving Marvin Barnes. Bob Costas tells some great stories about him. There's great stories about him, too, in the book Loose Balls. I highly recommend reading it. The stories about Marvin Barnes are just crazy. This guy, his life is something else. Captain Late James Silas, great guard. And there's the rookie card of Moses Malone. Willie Wise, too bad he never played in the NBA. What a great player he was. Byron Beck, one of only 3 guys that played all 9 years in the ABA, and 2 that spent the whole career with one team. He was a Nugget. Dwight Lamar, although they had been the Rockets first. They were the Denver Rockets, then changed their name. Len Elmore was later, he was out of Maryland, pretty good center, playing the NBA too. Dan Issel, he's a Hall of Famer. He was a good coach too. Just an outstanding player later with the Nuggets. And there's the aforementioned Rick Mount. And as you can see, he's not with the Pacers anymore. He's with the Memphis Sounds. Memphis had changed their name so many times. They started off as the New Orleans Buccaneers, then they were the Memphis Pros, then they were the Memphis Tams, and then they were the Memphis Sounds, and then they moved to Baltimore and became the Claws. But Rick Mount never really, he was the first high school player ever on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but his career never really developed. It didn't really pan out. The Whopper, Billy Pultz, Donnie Freeman, George Adams, Don Washington, Randy Denton, Don Duck Cheney. Should have never jumped to he was not an ABA style guy. He should have stayed with the Celtics. Good defender. Roland Fatty Taylor, Charlie Edge, Louis Dampier, the ABA's all-time leading scorer. One of Rupp's Runts, that Kentucky team, pretty famous Kentucky team. They got beat by UTEP Miners, if you've seen that movie. Anyhow, Hollis Jones, Al Skinner, Kobe Dietrich, Gerald Govan, Freddie Lewis. And he also played all 9 years in the league, but he spent time with the Pacers. He also played with Memphis and with the Spirits of St. Louis. Tim Bassett, Ron the Plumber Thomas. Here you've got some ABA team cards coming up now. Kentucky Colonels. They should have made the cut into the NBA. They did not. Memphis Sounds. New York Nets, of course, did. They're now the Brooklyn Nets. The Spirits of St. Louis. They said St. Louis Spirits, but they were actually the Spirits of St. Louis. They were not the St. Louis Spirits. The San Antonio Spurs made the cut. The San Diego Sails didn't finish out the last season. They folded. Same with the Utah Stars. They folded. That's too bad. That was one of the more popular teams in the league. They just, the guy that owned the team, Bill Daniels, had run for governor of Colorado and blown all his money, and so he had to fold the team. Virginia Squires, somehow they did stumble through the last season. They did it on a shoestring budget. robbing Peter to pay Paul, but they made it. Claude Terry. Will Jones, one of like 5 Jones brothers to play in the NBA. This guy, Darnell Hillman, he could dunk, and he had the greatest afro in the history of basketball. Well, I think he lost to Julius Erving, but he had the better afro, if you ask me. There's Bill Bonehead Melchione. Special K, Larry Keenan. Fly Williams, this guy was a New York legend, street ball legend. Didn't last long in the ABA. I don't even know I don't think he played in the NBA at all, but he famously was being recruited by Austin Peay. And he, instead of flying to Clarksville, Tennessee, where that college is, he flew down to Austin and started asking people, where's the P? Where's the P, man? I guess it's Austin P. Austin Red Robbins. Warren Jabali, one of the toughest men in the ABA. He loved to fight. Jumbo, Jim Akins. Bobby Jones was later, helped out the Sixers win that championship. What a great role player, tough defender, just an excellent player. Don Boosie was a really good guard, too. The greatest player in the ABA, the guy that carried the league, the face of the league, Dr. J, Julius Erving, George Karl, one of the great coaches in basketball history. Maurice Lucas, rest in peace. Also on that 77 Trailblazer team. Billy Shepard, Jim Bradley, Caldwell Jones, Al Smith, Jan Van Bredekolf. His dad was a pretty good coach, too. Darrell Elston. He got the ABA semifinals. And then the finals, the Colonels taking down the Pacers. Teddy Hound Dog McLean, Willie Sojourner, Bobby Warren, Bob Needlicki. I think he had like a pet jaguar in his apartment or something like that, or a pet lion. Chuck Williams. Oops. Gene Kennedy, Jimmy O'Brien, Dave Robish. Some team cards. George Irvine, he played at the University of Washington. Wally Jones, more team cards. Love that red, white, and blue ball and the three-point shot. The ABA was the stuff. New York Nets, St. Louis Spirits. Nope, they were the Spirits of St. Louis. San Antonio Spurs. The Sales couldn't even get together to take a team. Just here's your headshots. That's how cheap the Sales were. Stars, last but not least, Virginia Squires. That's it. The 75-76 Topps basketball set.